Hey everybody, I'm Lewis Cobble, apiary inspector in North Carolina. I cover 21 westernmost counties in North Carolina. And I wanted to share with you today my monitoring results for 2021 in my own bees and go over some things that I think are interesting and important. So this is my spreadsheet. We'll go through this kind of more thoroughly. But I have the colony ID. Each of my colonies has an ID number associated with it, so I can follow it through the season. And I monitored each colony 5 times through the year: March, June, July, September, and October. Then I have those results, and the highlighted red cells indicate where there were issues or something interesting going on. So let's take a closer look at that. So we're going to look at the March monitoring. I like to start my monitoring program early in the season to catch anything that might be awry early, deal with it before it does any damage in the apiary. And so I do that at population buildup in my area. That can be as early as middle of February. This year, I didn't get started till March 15th. The weather, bees really didn't start building up until early March. Monitor everybody. In my apiary, I usually have between 20 and 40 colonies. At this point, I have about 20 colonies. And you can see that things are looking pretty good. These are sorted from low to high as far as March infestation rate. So most of the apiary is clean. I have a few colonies at 1% or below. I do have one outlier. This is mites per 100 bees, or infestation rate. So I had, 10 mites in my half-cup sample in early March, which is a little out of my comfort zone. So I definitely wanted to deal with them early. And I also include my June numbers because we can see I did apply Apivar to this colony number 16. And you can see when I came back in June that Apivar had been effective, right? I didn't have to do anything else to any of the other colonies. Let's go on to June and see what's going on. Again, ranked from low to high here. In June, I used to do another monitoring in between. So I'd start in February or March, and I'd do another one in late April, early May. And that monitoring was always pretty boring. There's so much capped brood. There's not a lot of mites. And so probably the last 2 or 3 years, I've included that in my monitoring program, but I've dropped it this year just because there was nothing really interesting happening there. So my next monitoring is in June. I have 3 colonies that are a little out of my comfort zone. Colony number 40 is a swarm that I picked up in April or May, and it came with mites, looks like. I probably should have monitored and dealt with them before they had capped brood. That's a great opportunity to use oxalic acid to hit that reset button on the mites, but I didn't do that. But I did catch it at my June monitoring, along with 2 other colonies, colony 12 and colony 20. So remember, this is infestation rate. So that's probably 19 mites in my half-cup sample. And what's this, 22 or 23 mites in my half-cup sample. So that's really out of my comfort zone. I did apply Apivar to these 3 colonies. So I'm only applying to those that need help. So I'm not applying to the whole apiary in these situations. That'll change at my next monitoring in July, but so far I'm just spot treating in the apiary. And you can see that those treatments were effective, right? So I went from 5% to 0, a little over 6% to less than 1%, and from almost 8% to 0. So happy with those treatments. Keep an eye on colony number 3 here. We see We can kind of see what's going to happen on the next slide, that this is going to be way out of bounds. Colony 3 is at 2.6% in June. I think if we go back and look in March, it's at 0. Colony 3, yeah, no mites in March, 2.6 in June. Then we'll see almost 16% in July. So that was quite a shock there. So here are this is my July, kind of mid-July monitoring. This is my pre-treatment. I treat every colony in the apiary, usually start treating as early as mid-July and no later than mid-August, but generally around August 1st. And this is my pre-treatment monitoring to make sure things aren't too far out of control before treatment. And you can see the apiary is in pretty good shape, 25% squeaky clean. 50–60% of the apiary, less than 2%, totally fine with that. And then we got 15% here that are a little out of control, but not alarmingly. And then colony number 3 that, for whatever reason, has just gone from nothing to something. So it had 0 mites in the sample in that March sampling, and they started to creep up in June. And they have exploded in July for whatever reason. So this was a little early. I did go ahead and treat colony number 3 as soon as I saw these numbers. The rest of the apiary, it was I was going to wait at least until early to mid-August. You'll see in the next slide that I have a lot more colonies at that September monitoring. And that's because I got a bunch of queen cells in mid-July and did a bunch of splits. I replaced queens and made splits with cells after I did this monitoring. So these are my post-treatment numbers. And you can see I've got extra colonies here from those splits with the queen cells. And very pleased with the treatment efficacy. Everybody got Apivar there sometime in early August. And you can see almost, just estimate, almost 2/3 of the colony of the apiary is squeaky clean. I've got another batch here that is less than 2%. What's that? Maybe 15%, less than 2%. Totally happy with that. And I got a couple colonies here that are a little out of my comfort zone. One of them way out of my comfort zone. This is the mite count, and this is in percent infestation. So percent infestation, really not so bad. Not, my hair's not on fire. We're okay. But it'll be interesting to watch these colonies. I believe colony number 72 I believe that was a beekeeper error on my part. I didn't treat them correctly. It wasn't an issue with the product. It was an issue with the beekeeper. So I think I'm responsible for this on number 72. And we'll look at these other colonies here next month. But post-treatment, feeling very good. Then we come back just 1 month later. Actually, let's go back and look at this. So this is 1 month later, and I think I'm sorted from low to high here in that last monitoring of the season. And remember, last month, two-thirds of the colony were squeaky clean. Now we only have 3 colonies that are squeaky clean. The other thing I want to say is at this September monitoring, there was a lot of cat brood in these colonies. I was amazed at how much cat brood I had here in mid to late September. And I was equally amazed just 4 weeks later at how little cat brood I was seeing. In fact, in some of these colonies, I think in 5 of these colonies, it was not clear to me that I even had a queen. It looked queenless. Now, I don't think that all 5 of these are queenless. I just left them. I'm not going to do anything crazy with them until February. If they're still, if there's no brood in February, then I'll do something with them. But at any rate, now that I have so much less cat brood, we can see that there are a few mites left in the colony, but nothing too out of control. Most of it is less than 2%. I do have a couple down here that are concerning. Colony number 5, it was at 4% in July pre-treatment, and it only went to 3% post-treatment, so it didn't make a lot of headway on the mites. Then I come back when I have no cat brood, and it's exploded to 15%. So I think there were a lot of mites in that cat brood during the September monitoring, and there was no cat brood in this colony in October. And so there was I think there were a lot of mites under that cat brood in September. Now they're on the adult bees. This is a colony that I purchased. I don't ever buy bees, but this is a colony that I purchased this season. And I think it came with some apivar resistant mites in it. I did an apivar efficacy test on this colony and found that the apivar was only 34% effective on these mites. So I think in this case, it was an apivar issue. I think in this other colony that has 32 mites in my half cup sample, I also did some efficacy testing on that. It was 67% effective, not perfect, but I would say not enough to account for all these mites. I think in this case, I was reinfested from outside is what I think happened, but I don't know. And in fact, I don't even really care what happened. What I care about is that I caught it with my late season monitoring, and I applied apibioxol with the vaporization. Both these colonies were just no cat brood at all. And so I believe that probably got me where I needed to go. The rest of these colonies, they are okay for the moment. They will get an apivar application, not apivar, but an apibioxol vaporization in mid-December, so in about a month. And I'll try to clean everybody up so they can start as clean as possible in 2022. I think that's all I have on that. So some people have asked about doing apivar efficacy testing. It's really quite simple. These are the supplies. So it's a quart-sized deli container. This is a 5.5-inch square weigh boat. This is the top for the deli container with number 8 hardware cloth. So basically, you turn this deli container into a sugar shake jar. Some binder clips. This is a square of apivar. So with your rectangular strip of apivar, just snip you a square, and some petroleum jelly and a hot glue gun. So the hot glue gun is to attach the apivar strip to the bottom of the cup. So it's just, well, you'll see it in a minute. It's hanging from the top. And the petroleum jelly is to coat the weigh boat. And so you put all the stuff together, and this is basically the setup. You can see that apivar strip hanging from the top here. That mesh top is here. Binder clips here to hold it off of the weigh boat. The weigh boat is coated with that petroleum jelly, so as mites fall out, they stick to the weigh boat. So you'd put your half cup sample of bees into the jar, just 300 half cup or 300 bees into your container, flip it upside down onto the weigh boat for 3 hours. I like to just put them in my basement where it's kind of cold and dark, let them sit for 3 hours. And then you count how many mites fell out onto the weigh boat, and you count, and then you do a wash and see how many mites are still left on the bees. So this is an example of that colony 5 where it looked to me like I have an apivar failure. So I started the test. So it's a 3-hour test. I started at 11:30. I ended at 2:30. I had 15 mites in the tray. So those mites in the tray that have fallen out, they are susceptible to the apivar. So these are the mites. These are the good mites. These are the ones that are apivar is able to kill. I had 29 mites left on the bees in the jar. So these are mites that are not susceptible to apivar. These are resistant mites. And I add these two numbers together, I have 44 mites total. I also count the number of bees, and I can calculate apivar efficacy by dividing A by C. So 15 divided by 44, 0.34 or 34%. And I can also calculate my infestation rate. Total mites divided by total number of bees. So almost 19% infestation. So I would say in colony 5, I had an apivar problem. In colony 10, I had about a 67% efficacy rate. Not ideal, but not enough, I would say, to call it an apivar failure. So not all, but this is a pretty simple test. Many of the NCDA apiary inspectors are outfitted and trained to do this test. So ask your apiary inspector if resistance testing is right for you, right? All right, so if max colony health is your priority, so these are the things that I think you should consider if maximum colony health is your priority. So I know for some beekeepers, it's something that they're interested in, but it's not the maximum, it's not their top priority. Their top priority is honey production, or their priority is not working so hard in the bees. Depends on what your goal is. But for me, my goal is max colony health. And this is what I do to get there. This is things I would recommend that you do to get there. Start your monitoring program early. Remember that colony that was up almost 4% in March? If I had not started my program early, if I didn't do any monitoring until August or September, that colony would have been wildly out of control. Monitor every colony. Remember at that first monitoring, 90% of the colonies were fine. I only had one that was out of whack. And if I hadn't monitored every colony, I wouldn't have caught that. And you can see that in every monitoring. It looks to me like that every time I monitor, on average, 10% of the colonies are out of whack, sometimes wildly out of whack. And if I'm just subsampling, a few of the colonies, there's no way I'm going to catch those. And it's super important to catch those. So put the effort in to monitor every colony so you can catch those bees, catch those mites, catch those colonies where there are issues. Post-treatment monitoring is critical. Just because you apply a treatment, that does not say anything about how effective it was. I talked to so many beekeepers that said, well, I treated, so it could not have been mites. And I find that's just not true at all. Many times you should assume that your treatment failed. Do the post-treatment monitoring and find out. I would also say, sometimes I'll quiz or I'll just ask a beekeeper in July, have you done any monitoring? Have you seen any mites? And they'll say, oh, I monitored 4 or 5 of my 40 colonies, and I was definitely seeing some mites. And that's a real red flag. I think in a good apiary where you're really staying on top of it, you should have a hard time finding mites. You shouldn't be able to just go out there and sample 10% of your colonies and find a lot of mites in all of them. If you're doing that, if you're finding a lot of mites in 5 or 10% of your colonies, I can say with pretty good certainty there are a lot more mites there in your apiary that you haven't seen yet. So I think it's really important to sample all the colonies. Keep the program going until you put your bees to bed for the winter. So remember, My post-treatment monitoring looked pretty darn good in mid-September. It'd be easy for me to just say, hey, we're good. I'll see you guys next year. But then I came back just not even a month later, 28 days later. Okay, maybe that is a month. But just within a month, I have, several colonies that are wildly out of control again. And it's important for me to catch those as well. Think about if I didn't have a good monitoring program and I didn't start my monitoring up again until August of next year, think about, so I didn't monitor at the end of the season. I didn't catch that colony that had 45 mites in half cup this year. And I didn't look again until next September. That is a recipe for disaster, not just for that colony, but for other colonies in the apiary. So I think it's really important that you catch those. So I think that's the bulk of what I have. Let me see if I can. All right, yeah. So that's it. I just want to underscore, I say this all the time. There are three things that give beekeepers a lot of problems and account for, in my experience, 95% of the issues that I look at. Number one is mites. Have a good monitoring program. Stay on top of your mites. Don't let them get ahead of you. Number two is manage your queen events. So don't do things to encourage swarming in the spring, like feeding too much. Keep a good eye on your colonies. Make sure they have space. Add space, make splits. Try to work against swarming. Of course, we can't prevent swarming, but we can try to work against it. But I would encourage you to not encourage swarming by overfeeding your bees. So think about that. And the third thing is queen events and feeding, right? So mites, queen events, feeding. Queen events, manage those swarms as best as you can. Feeding, don't feed too much to push them into swarming. Don't feed them too little so that they starve to death. I definitely had too many phone calls in August of people complaining about dead bees, blaming it on pesticides when it was a starvation issue. So definitely don't let your bees starve to death. I see that in August. Sometimes I see that in March and April as well. So I'm not saying feed your bees all the time. I'm saying make sure they have enough food. Don't let them starve to death, but don't feed them too much either. So that's my advice. So hopefully that is helpful. And I hope this my monitoring results or be of value to you. And definitely call on me if I can help. Thank you.